What? I don't even know where we're at.
I don't even, and that's the thing. Genuinely, I'm there and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I don't know what we're doing with this one.
All right, so let's just do this. Let's have an honest, unscripted conversation about the reality of episode 3. I can riff. I can just talk and bounce things off you as we go.
What do you mean the reality of episode 3?
How it was difficult to come together. How, the feedback that we've gotten so far has impacted what we do, which is good because we're listening to what people are saying.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like on a personal level for me, even if I wasn't part of this, I would have loved to have heard Ingmar tell his story. A brand new car company, the first 3 people who got their cars was in an extraordinary manner.
Yeah, they had to climb up a rope.
Yes, up a fucking mountain.
I've never heard about that at all. I mean, even all the gimmickry in the car world. It's like, hey, climb up a rope, otherwise you can't get the keys to your car.
Yes. And then even without that, you got to take a vehicle designed for something very specific and utilize that capability to get your vehicle home.
Yeah, and we can't forget that 2 out of the 3 members that were there that won that competition had never driven off-road before, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, not to interrupt you. Speaking of Ingmar, I was an early doubter. There were threads that I had on our forum where I was like, there's no way this is real. This guy's lying. He's fake. There's no way. And when it was revealed that it was him, that it was legit, first thing I did was go on there and say, oh, okay, foot and mouth. I was wrong. So glad he's part of us. And a member privately messaged me to say, it was really good that you sort of stepped up on that. I will give you one guess who it was. No, in fact, don't guess.
In today's show, Greg tells us a few things. We have a failed jag stand, a monster truck rolls over, and we discuss car keys in After Hours. The long-awaited medallions have arrived. They're in my hand.
Oh, yes.
And people will be like, excuse me, what is that? Well, it's a medallion designed to go on the exterior of your vehicle with your Global Grenadier membership number.
Yes. Wow. Hold that up to the camera for me. You have one right by you?
Yeah.
Wow. Now, who is 0008?
That is my account.
You are 0008. How the hell are you not 0002? We know who 0001 is. How could you possibly not be the first member of your own forum?
There were a few other people that were involved and subsequently abandoned it, and here we are.
Well, that's interesting then that you're 0008. I was thinking about this today. I had a long bus ride to get to our soccer match this morning, and I thought, okay, so it needs to be done so there's a signature, not just a cold delivery. But 0001 should be mailed to Sir Jim at the factory offices, which I don't know the address offhand. I'm sure they're online.
I know where it is. They'll send it to the pub.
Oh, that would be epic.
Together with the membership pack, which is being put together, and a couple of other things, and we'll give him a sticker as well, because I think Sir Jim would like a sticker on his Grenadier.
Well, absolutely. Maybe we should provide a drawing of where it goes on his truck.
Well, that's going to be a little bit difficult because we're in America and they haven't.
We don't have a truck.
But anyway, just for the idea, because people don't know this design, as some may see on the avatar that I have on my forum signature and all the rest of it, has been designed by KRABBY. It's taken a very, very long time to go and source and get these medallions manufactured and to get them as good as we can. Make them really, really nice to stick on your vehicle. And they're very tactile. It's in front of me and I can't stop just holding it. And you'll see when you get them, guys and ladies.
I think they look great. And then to put our individual member numbers on them is freaking epic, especially considering, and people won't know this, but that you went out of your way and bought a special machine just to do that. That was the whole reason you bought that machine. That's pretty cool.
It's really good at setting fire to stuff, which I found out yesterday.
Yes.
A laser etcher very successful at setting fire to plywood, as I had to make a sign for my son's lemonade booth that said lemonade at 75 cents.
And our cent sign is like the C with the little top and bottom.
I just put a capital C.
Yeah. See, that's wrong.
I didn't even know there was a cent sign. See,
There
I don't
is.
even know. I'm still there with the coins. I'm like, what's this?
But the cent symbol does not appear on the cent, I don't believe. I don't think it's actually on there.
There's generally loads of shrapnel knocking around, which for the Americans listening, shrapnel is a British term, slang term for coins.
Or the inner bits of a grenade that might have been thrown by a grenadier.
Speaking of which, there's Grenadiers in the States now. We knew that they were landed a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
And Greg kindly put out a video.
I saw that.
Turned up in Brunswick. The EPA certification and the CARB is done now.
So that means we should get real EPA fuel mileage numbers as opposed to 15, 15, 15, everybody gets 15.
And 14.
Oh, yeah, is that what it was, 14?
Yeah. I mean, the Land Rover gets single figures off-road anyway, so I'm like, it's all a moot point.
My 80 series Land Cruiser got about 8 around town. My Raptor did pretty well around town, was about 15.
Yeah, that's what Land Rover gets. But I've got the tires are a bit bigger, and the roof rack and the ladder and all the other things that the kids insist I put in it. Drag that down.
So I watched Greg's video. He made reference to multiple ports.
3 other ports apart from Brunswick.
Right, but he didn't say which ones they were, correct? I've probably foolishly made the assumption that it would be New Jersey.
They did. They said we were landing them in Jersey.
Yeah.
But okay, so let's say we've got Brunswick, you've got you in Jersey. That still leaves 2.
To me, it doesn't make sense. Now, I know nothing. I'm just some random dude. But to me, it would make more sense to ship everything to the East Coast, train them or truck them to the West Coast, as opposed to going down through the canal and up to California. That just seems like that would take longer. I mean, I don't know. There's 3 dealerships in the state of California, so maybe not. I don't know.
I mean, we've got to be honest here and say that INEOS aren't particularly bothered on how long it takes you to get your vehicle, really. I know that's a low blow, but there's people that have been waiting a very long time in Australia.
Well, wait, was it January when Dave B had to revoke his post because he thought he had his truck? And now it's September.
I think so.
It's September 16th as we record this. It is still not there.
I think it's on the dock in Fremantle or something.
Yeah.
So Dave B, please, if you listen to this, correct us. Okay, so if we have 3 other ports apart from New Brunswick, then bearing in mind you have to import them to Canada.
Oh, so maybe one of those ports is Canadian.
So land them on the East Coast, clear them on the East Coast, ship them west.
Mm-hmm. That's right, which makes sense.
Let's say there's a Canadian one. And then there's
Nova
2
Scotia.
others that we're missing.
And New Jersey has to be one of them. Like, I forget where I sourced that from. It was in one of the videos, or it came from somewhere.
That as an aside, we know that they're importing after January the 1st into Canada. They stated categorically this was about an import duty tax.
Yes.
And there's been a little bit of a hubbub on the forum about, does this mean that the Canadian price is going to go down?
I saw that.
Or was the fact that tax was not going to be payable on these vehicles already baked into the price, so they didn't have to put it up anymore?
Right. If that was the case, and I don't know what the normal import duty on trucks is there, but many of our northern members were frustrated with the pricing. Could you imagine if that was even 10% higher? Or if it was, if it was like a chicken tax thing of 25% higher? I just don't see how they would sell.
I seem to remember there was a dialogue going back and forth about a luxury car tax that was applied to this vehicle in Canada. Again, if we're wrong, which we possibly are, because it's sort of riffing on this episode, then please let us know.
Are you particularly familiar with the chicken tax, being a non-American?
I'm now to a certain extent, because I've had to read up on it. Number one, it's the most impressive name for a taxation regime, absolutely. Even though it's not the official one.
It's the official one's like what, the Import Act of 1964 or something like that.
Yeah, that's catchy.
But yeah, chicken tax, and if you've researched it on, I think I don't know if we've talked about it or not, but we were talking about certain companies tried to circumvent it. And one of the early
Subaru.
I was just going to say, so in the Subaru Brat had two little jump seats in the back of
So that would that be the Subaru sausage or the Subaru unpleasant child?
No, it's a Brat, not a Brat. It's the Subaru Brat.
The inflection's different.
Okay. So we had one when I was a kid, and I don't remember anything about it except A, it was brown, and B, it had these amazing seats in the back.
Well, you can't have sat in them or used them as a kid because you're still alive.
No, but here's the thing. They were epic. They were amazing. I should just go buy a pair of them and strap them somewhere, because it was hard plastic, and it wasn't you couldn't tilt it or anything, but it had two like grab handles. So when you sat, I was probably 7 or 8, and my sister's 2 years behind me. And so you would hold it, and it looked like, if people are familiar with the
sounds like the seats on a roller coaster.
Well, kind of. And you grab these two handles, and it was like if you've ever seen the guy who flew over the '84 Olympics with a jetpack, and your hands
That's iconic, actually.
Yeah, and your hands are out in front of you grabbing. That's what it was like.
Oh my gosh.
And my dad would only let us ride in them like if we were just going like in the neighborhood, basically.
That must have been thrilling as a child.
And it was beyond amazing as a kid. So much so, 40 years later, I still remember it. And that's all I remember about it. I tried to find...
What color was it?
It was brown, some kind of brown, Subaru brown.
Subaru brown.
And I remember, it's funny because I don't know if I've said this in the past, but it certainly relates, because you'll hear a story about my dad's finger. But my dad for many years was a mechanic. And once he was done sort of wrenching for a living, he was in management, ran a service department at a very swanky BMW dealership.
Are they going to be a dealer?
I tell you what, they're not. But it might be a place I get my oil changed if they'll do it on a, because it's BMW engine. But I would always try to go to work with my dad on the weekends, because I was into cars and I loved spending time with my dad. I still do. And so at one point, I must have been in middle school, and this guy that worked for him had an old Subaru. And this is probably the mid to late 80s, right? Let's see, I'm 10. Yeah, probably mid to late 80s. And that was before Subarus looked good. They were just ugly.
Okay, that's an arguable comment right now.
Well, yes. Okay. So, but they were definitely ugly then. You might consider them ugly now, but they were definitely ugly then.
Eye of the beholder and all of that.
Well, so this guy, his name was Bob, and Bob was a funny dude, especially to a 12-year-old. Like I thought he was from the South. He had this big, crazy biker beard, and he rode some kind of big bike. But on days it rained, he would drive this. So
we've got Bob the biker with a biker beard that rides a bike.
Yes. And he also had a brown Subaru, and it was ugly, and I would make fun of him.
He likes the letter B.
Yeah. And I would make fun of him. And it wasn't until I was in college when my college roommate exposed me to rally racing. I had never heard of it, never saw it. And he introduced it to me. And there is not much in my life I would not give up to have a real WRX, 2-door rally car, like the one that was Colin McRae's, and they just auctioned off for millions of dollars.
Oh, I was thinking you were going to say an RS2000 then.
Oh God, that's the car that I've also always wanted.
Oh, fast forwards from that day. Yes, love it.
And so Bob, if you're listening, which I highly doubt you are, you may not even be of this earth anymore, Bob. But accept my apologies. I would own a Subaru. I absolutely was. In fact, I wish the Levorg came to America. I mean, we bought a Subaru. My wife has a Subaru Outback, and we love it. But the Levorg, I mean, that's a STI station wagon. Who wouldn't want that?
I have no idea what that is. Do they still make it?
Yeah. It's I know it's in Japan. I don't know if it gets exported elsewhere. It's called the Lavorg, and it's basically an STI station wagon. Look it up. It's a great car. It's very pretty, a lot punchier than the Outback is, but they don't bring them to America because we're not a wagon country anymore.
It used to be, and that's a shame.
Yeah. God, I would love to have a 5 Series wagon, an M5 station wagon. That'd be amazing. Or an Audi, one of the Audi A5. Was it A5 wagons? The all-road? Or RS6.
That's the one you want. Yes. I came very close to buying one of those years ago.
Stateside or when you were still across?
Oh, gosh, no. Over in Europe. I can't remember the name of the derivative, but it was the last one that was still slightly boxy. It was a toss-up between the RS6 and the RS4. And then I bought an M5 BMW instead.
A coupe or...
Yeah, the sedan, which arguably is still the best all-round car I've ever owned. I missed
What year was it? Roughly what year?
Ooh, it was an E39, so it was the last of the vehicles where you could switch off everything. Yep. 6-speed manual. That was so nice.
I don't know if you recall. Do you recall the just to age this, I actually have it on a VCR tape. Now I have no means by which to play this VCR tape anymore. However, I recorded on a VCR tape the BMW M5 commercial that was directed by Guy Ritchie, with Clive Owen is the chauffeur, and he's bringing Madonna from her hotel.
I've seen that
to her show or whatever, and he's driving like an absolute maniac. And it is a wonderful commercial. It was, I don't know if they were married yet, but Guy Ritchie directed it. Madonna was in it, and Clive Owen was in it, and it was amazing. And I'm sure now I'm sure I could find it on YouTube, but I actually have it on a VCR tape. I taped it at my house because I thought it was such a great commercial.
For hours and hours with the remote control hovering over the red button.
But it was one of those things where commercials then were very predictable. Like if you watched college football, you know you were going to see commercials A, B, and C. So, once cable started, it was even that much easier for targeted advertising. And it makes sense. Like, when it comes to the streaming situation, again, they know who now there's so much data that they know everything. So that's why all the ads are targeted. And I tried to explain this to my students once, and they didn't believe me. I was teaching middle school kids. They're 12 and 13. They didn't believe me. And I said, okay. I said, what I want you to do is go home and go in Google and start searching for diapers and baby wipes. Diapers and baby wipes. Just do that for a day or two. And then I want you to start going back to the sites you always go to. And I bet you money there are going to be ads for baby wipes and diapers that pop up. Of course there is.
Absolutely.
Because, yes, we know they keep cookies and all that stuff. It blew their minds. And I said, guys, you have to understand, like, everything you do is tracked.
Advertising's everywhere, apart from on the forum if you sign up. And I'm like, okay, so I'll just Google Lemon 5 or 6 times on various sites. And then that's it. Those are the ads that keep coming up for me. So if I'm going to be subject to this, I want something that I don't find umbrage at.
Correct.
Not that I want to buy anything. It's just, I'd sooner that image there than something else. Why not?
So yeah, anyway, as a long roundabout to all that, and talking about advertising, I see that you're wearing a Monster Jam t-shirt.
Yes. Yes, I am. I got this at Monster Jam that I was fortunate enough to attend a few weeks ago with my son and his best friend and his best friend's dad. And it was thoroughly entertaining. Now, for
it is global, but if you're not sure what Monster Jam is, it's basically monster trucks, and but it's competitive, like legitimately competitive. It's not wrestling.
Yeah, I thought they were just going to be squishing cars and stuff.
No, it's not. It's not Bob Chandler anymore.
They race those things. All right, the races are small and they go around in a circle, but you can see that the drivers are trying really, really hard. Yeah. And if you look at the bios of the drivers, these aren't just people that have just been pulled up. I mean, they're top fuel dragster drivers. Mm-hmm. So they're professional, top of their game. Car racers from various different disciplines. And it was really cool. It's probably the most American thing that I've ever done. And I think it would be difficult to top it, as I don't care for American football too much.
No, I don't.
I'll watch it, and it's just a bit too drawn out for me. But if you want something that's punchy, it's Monster Jam, because a race is 30 seconds. Bang.
And it's loud, and that wonderful smell of ethanol.
It is. It's loud. It's not too loud for me because there's a certain portion of my hearing that's now defunct from working and operating insanely large turbochargers. So there's a frequency range that just doesn't respond. I just feel the vibrations through my body rather than hearing it. So I'm like, oh, okay. But it was cool. But there was one interesting thing. It's like there's one of the drivers, I can't remember. It was one of the ladies. And she rolled the car, a monster truck. And I was like, they sent out 2 really large Volvo earth movers or whatever with a massive big hook thing on the front to ride this thing. And I was wondering, it's like, would the Grenadier, with enough weight on it so it could actually get the traction, have enough torque to ride a Monster Jam monster truck?
I wonder how much they weigh. I do know that. So I'm no expert.
You could definitely tow one.
Expert.
I mean, as long as it's in neutral, it would definitely tow it.
It's correct. They're fiberglass bodies, and they're space frame. I don't know. I mean, I imagine they have big block, 500, 600 cubic inch engines in them. So
they sound good. It sounds good. And the smell of the ethanol is wonderful.
Yeah.
But they blew up one of the gearboxes as well while we were there. And those guys, the mechanics, they came over on the PA, the ladies that were hosting the event. Anyway, it just got to me like how fast these mechanics work. And it's like, man, you must have a really big jack.
Yeah, well, you would imagine so. Because I don't think a normal high lift jack is going to get it done, considering the tires are how tall? Like 70-inch tires or whatever they are. And
yeah, they're about 5 feet, I think.
And they're way cranked up and all that. But jacks, as we to explain all the way back around, we all have jack stands. And
I had one fail on me once.
Well,
that wasn't fun.
No,
fortunately I wasn't underneath it.
I'm lazy. I usually just let the jack handle it, which is bad. I totally know it's bad. And not even put jack stands, just leave the hydraulic jack. It'll be fine. And luckily, I've never had a situation where I could have gotten hurt. But my dad did. And
is
so
he still with us?
He is.
Oh, okay. I thought this was going to get very morbid very fast.
No. He's still there. All right. So this involves my dad. So my dad was a mechanic, had his own. Now, I mean, I don't know how it was or how it is in the UK. But years ago in America, the corner gas station mechanic was like a real thing. I mean, it's kind of gone now. Now it's just all these super gas stations and big stores. But, the mechanic on site who also pumped gas was common. And my dad was working there alone. He had a kid pumping gas for him, 16, 17-year-old kid.
He was underneath the car. Now.
Yeah, well, now this is the 70s. So he's under a car. And something happens where the jack stand breaks, and his finger, it's his left hand, middle finger.
Yes, I can see the middle finger on your left hand.
Right at this first joint. Okay, got clipped between the top of the jack stand and the car, and the fingertip basically came off. So now my dad has an incredibly high tolerance for pain, way more than I ever did. So obviously he's yelling, is starting to bleed. He's freaking out. So the kid comes running in, because he obviously knows something happened, sees the blood, throws up and leaves, like gets back out of the garage area, the bay area.
Thank you, sidekick.
Yep. So I don't know exactly. Somehow they got him out of there. So he takes, and you can think about it. And I don't know if it's a universal thing, but how shop rags, like the fabric ones, are pink? Like they were probably red at one point, but they all look pink. You know what I'm talking about? So he grabs one of those sticks his fingertip back on his finger, wraps it up, and takes himself
That's
to the
exactly
hospital.
what you're supposed to do, by the way. But not in a garage rag.
Yeah.
It's sterile gauze is preferable.
Rag, right. So he gets to the... Now, this is up in North Jersey where it's much more congested, a lot more people than where I grew up. And he goes and he describes the woman at the desk as being quite large and quite unpleasant. Okay. It's an emergency room. I get it. So my dad goes in, tells her what happened. Okay, sit down. A lot of time's going by. Now it's starting to really hurt. He's starting to get a little lightheaded. He's bleeding the whole time. Goes back up to the desk. Look, lady, blah, blah, blah. We'll call you when we're ready. Blah, blah, blah. So finally, he goes up a third time and takes the rag off in front of this very large lady, who then sees the blood and faints and falls out of her chair.
And she works in an ER
so they
admissions.
finally get yes.
How did she
Correct.
pass?
In admissions,
How
she's
did
not
she
a doctor.
pass the audition for that job?
Yeah, because you're a secretary, you're not.
You're gonna see some gnarly
So they finally
stuff.
take him back. Yeah, I guess. So they take him back, and again, though, he's like in pain, but he's dealing with it. And he says to the doctor, so doctor's like, all right, we can sew it back on. He's like, you won't have feeling in it, because the nerves are cut, but we can sew the tip on and it'll heal enough. Okay. So he told the doctor, he's like, all I care about is that you sew it on straight.
And is it?
So I'll have to, for the benefit of the listeners, I will have to get a picture of how not straight my dad's middle finger is. Because it like goes up and then makes a 45-degree turn. It's like 45 degrees to the rest of his hand.
your dad's middle finger is literally like a dog's back leg.
Yes, it goes up and then it juts over. Yeah. And one of these days I'll post a picture of my dad's finger.
Well, you don't tweet anymore, you X.
No, I know you X. And I think X videos have a totally different tone to them than Twitter videos.
Just.
What an idiot. But you know what? It could all be some grand plan. Like, wouldn't it be amazing if it's some big grand plan on his part? Because he's a smart guy.
He's very, very switched on chap.
Yeah. And but sort of like certain American political figures, he's his own worst enemy. So,
well, that's what egos do to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good point. That's a very good point.
And
well,
speaking of which, is the reason that the Grenadiers in existence. Because arguably it was one man's ego that said, I'm sorry, but I don't want this to happen. With regard to the demise of the Defender. And one thing leads to another, and it's like, okay, come on, boys, let's make our own, which we've already established, because I've got the medallion in my hand. 001.
Yes.
For job one.
And what's great about that, we talked about, in episode 1, the backstory of the Grenadier. And not only is it ego, because I think we all, all say, oh, I could do this or I could do that. But we don't have the bank account. But even if you take that into account, like I said in episode 1, if I was at the table that day, I would not have been like, oh, yeah, let's do this. And I think I'm too much of maybe, I don't even know if pessimist is the right word. I would say realist. The people at Ineos say, how can I do this? Not, we can't do this. And I think that's pretty amazing, from a business culture.
Also, it's how can I do this better?
Mm-hmm.
Because the whiff that I'm getting, a whiff, that's such a wrong phrase for the genuine tone and intimation that I'm sort of picking up on for the North America rollout is that they are applying everything that they learned everywhere else, where it wasn't as smooth as they wished. Things were delayed. There was a batch and hold, as everybody knows, which is why Ingemar was doubted on if he even won the hard way home, because initial deliveries, as he said, were supposed to be before the Hard Way Home was put out. And it was delayed, and they didn't put a stop on production, but slowed it down to fix some issues that they identified and found. And then you had these 3 people that had these vehicles. So I do know for a fact, and it's been intimated to me, that every single lesson that's being learned for the rest of the world launch is being applied to North America to try and, I won't say get it right because that's such a cliche thing, but to make it as good a launch as possible. We're the only market, I believe, that has demonstrators or will have demonstrators before you actually have to buy the vehicle. I mean, how many people in Europe and Australia had to buy it sight unseen? They saw a static display.
Yeah.
And go, yeah, okay, I'll have one of those. A lot of the members haven't even done that. As you say, they've seen it online.
Yeah, saw a photograph. Actually, a rendering. Not even an
I saw
photograph.
a rendering in a stream in Iceland, and I'll have one of those, please.
Yeah.
I mean, the level of commitment and quite frankly, the balls that takes is a little bit more than maybe I would put up. But yeah, North America is going to get test drive vehicles that you can take on the road because they're registered, not just a PTO.
Correct.
Which is hey, please don't pull too hard on that handle because it's 3D printed and it might come off.
What goes along with that, in Greg's most recent Q&A, it was officially announced that September 28th will be dealer day.
Yes.
And as I understand it, from that point forward, it's like he said during the Q&A, it's not that it's job done, but any questions now at that point is now passed off to the American dealers.
It's getting to some level of normalcy here because at the moment it's you speak to the manufacturer if you want to know something. Then the dealer is actually doing their part of their job, answering questions to educate them on if this is the correct vehicle for them. And subsequently, the section of the forum that we've set up, which was the direct Q&A, which was set up specifically to help people to decide if they wanted to carry on with their purchase. That one's going to be closed down and archived. When the dealers are announced, each and every single one of them will have an entry in the forum where people can comment, they can rate, they can review. The dealers will also get a chance to actually get on board and claim ownership of their entry so they can formally respond to people. Because I do know that INEOS are incredibly keen for the purchasing and the overall experience, both in anticipation of getting your vehicle, buying your vehicle, and long-term ownership. They're vested in this being a good one.
What goes along with that? So today's the 16th, so it's 2 weeks until we officially know those things. We kind of know, I think, just because of the collective that is the forum and the snafu of some of the dealer names being inadvertently attached to orders. So we kind of have an idea of who they are. And it's funny because, there was a list pretty much compiled on the forum. I found myself looking up all these places and wanting to know who was it, what kind of car businesses latched onto this. I hope down the road we'll know more behind the scenes stuff. How many companies or how many dealerships threw their hat in the ring? Like, I don't know the process, but I would imagine
that would be an interesting stat to find out.
Yeah, because at least when it comes to American car dealerships, like, it's not like I could just be like, okay, I'm opening a Ford dealership. Like, I think you have to pay like a franchise fee, and like, it can't be easy to do. So it'd be very interesting to learn how that process went. And who knows, maybe one of our dealer members, can share that process at some point if they're allowed. But it would be interesting to know all the behind the scenes because, again, I'm a car nerd, although I'm not financially invested yet in this besides $450, which I'll get back anyway. I'm emotionally invested in this more than I've ever been in, it's funny because,
What you mean? You've never done a podcast for a vehicle that you don't own yet, that isn't available in the country that you live in?
Correct.
Shame on you.
And
what
the
have you been doing your entire life?
Yes. And the 15 minutes that I drove one for, as enjoyable as it was rather short lived. 3 hours in a car, 15 minutes, 3 hours in a car. So yeah, I want to know as much as I can about it. And I hope that my designated dealer, which will be in the greater Philadelphia region, that's the closest to New Jersey. I hope they prove to be the kind of people Ineos wanted to find, because that'll be the most rewarding for me as an owner.
Absolutely. And in relation to the whole dealer conversation as we're there now, the intention of the forum and the global Grenadiers and en masse is to strike up some sort of relationship with the dealers where, as a community, are involved in saying, hey, can you offer driver training? Can you please host off-road events? Similar to how Land Rover do, but obviously not the same price as Land Rover because it's very expensive now. And enriching the community from the more of the corporate side and not just the enthusiast side. Because we can all band up and say, hey, we're going for a drive this weekend, doing the Mojave Road. But when you get a dealer involved that actively really wants to promote their product, which is, it's a commercial thing on their part, you have people that want it, and it just makes it better for everybody.
Yeah.
So that's something that we're going to be pushing. And as dealers are announced, we'll be approaching everybody just to say, hey, what would you like to partner up on? So I'd just like to take this, and I'm sorry, but this is so North America specific right now for anybody listening that isn't from here. But for people that are, it's like, what would you like your dealer to be involved with? Answers on a postcard, please, or put it on the forum, and we can try and address this. Obviously, the whole thing of dealer markups, price gouging, that's going to be apparent very, very fast, and people can vote with their feet.
And their car and their bank accounts.
And their bank account. And that's as much as I'm going to say there. It's a free market, and you're able to buy from whomsoever you choose.
Yeah. And, to sort of spin back to what you said, and this is a post, this will sound familiar for people who actually take the time to read what I post on the forum. But this goes back several months now to a thread that was started that was basically like, hey, what kind of dealers do you guys want? And I referenced how Land Rover dealerships used to be. And when I say used to be, the first time I went into a Land Rover dealership, maybe 97 was the first time I ever actually went in one. And again, my roommate, his name's Galen. He's the one who exposed me to rally racing, and he's the one who exposed me to Land Rovers. I'd never heard, I'm sure I heard of them, but like not really. Where I grew up, and I think we've said this too, so forgive me if I repeat it, but like, four-wheeling or off-road driving in the section of New Jersey where I live in, which is along the coast, basically means, or when I was a kid, it meant that it was like a second generation Bronco with 44s or 46-inch super swampers on it. And you just go barreling through the woods and make big puddles. That's what it was. There was no technical driving. It was literally, let me just put the biggest tires I can and make the biggest holes I can. But it wasn't until I got to college that I realized that's not kind of how the world works. And
that's just as well, because we are trying to team up with Tread Lightly right now.
Well, absolutely, because a lot of people don't tread lightly, especially high school kids, which is where I was at the time. But I can remember going into a Land Rover dealership, and I became obsessed with them. And like the Land Rover, it was sort of like walking into an REI. Like it looked like an outdoor store.
Yeah.
The way people were dressed, the way things were decorated. But I wouldn't describe it as fancy. It was sort of like a hangout.
Did it smell of castor oil?
Well, it's Land Rovers. There was oil everywhere to be found. But no, like, you know what? The salespeople, they were not wearing three-piece suits. They weren't. They were dressed in khakis and hiking boots, like outdoors people. And that's how their franchises were modeled then. And I remember I got to go, I don't know if they had them in the UK or elsewhere, but in America, a lot of Land Rover dealerships had that little miniature off-road course.
Yeah, they definitely had like the load of rocks at the front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
the one local to where I grew up in Herefordshire, they definitely had one there.
And I remember, and the guy knew I wasn't buying a truck that day. I was a college kid, but he's like, yeah, I'll take you out there on it. And I was strapped in the passenger seat, and like, it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. Just that little circuit that they had in the parking lot. And that was my exposure to it. And that's what I want. When I walk into X, Y, or Z dealership, I want to be able to sit down and BS with the person about the vehicle because they have one too, you know? And I think that's where if Ineos succeeds in terms of the vision that they've set forth, the kind of impression we all got about who they tried to pair up with, that's what we're going to get. You know,
I sincerely hope so.
Yeah. Because my dealer is going to be an hour and a half away, which is probably close for a lot of folks. You know, so we look at the dealer map, there's really nothing in the middle besides Chicago. So if I make that drive, I want to be welcomed. I don't need to feel special, but I need to feel a part of it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. In following up from what you just said there, you want to feel a part of it. And that is generally the tone that I feel that Ineos and the dealerships do actually want to try and propagate a little bit. Well, not a little bit, a lot. That whole it's a Jeep thing is, yeah, you feel like you're part of a club and a community. And that's definitely what they and we are trying to achieve here.
Yeah. And like you said, I hope that is how it works out, because we know even if they sell as much as they quote unquote can in the States, you know, there was a thread where we mentioned the cafe limits and all that sort of stuff. But let's say they sell even 10,000 in America in 1 year.
It's still a rare vehicle.
Yes.
Very rare.
Jeep sells like 200 something thousand Wranglers a year.
That's because they only last 3 years.
Well, but okay, so that means there's at least 600,000 of them out there at any moment.
That's right. They're like paper dragon. They just sort of dissolve.
Yeah, but they're everywhere. And so,
yeah. There's 4 on my street in front.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind I live in a college town, so that's and they're $35,000. So what do you expect? Yeah. College kid that wants a fun vehicle. It's a Jeep.
Yeah.
Yeah. When they grow up, they get a Grenadier.
Show went in a different direction than we sort of planned. Just
this
because
is version 4.
Yeah, it's. But the truth is, for those, if anyone's listening at this point, it was a crazy 2 weeks. You know, my schedule became much crazier with the start of school, and it's not just the start of school because a normal school teacher leaves at 2 or 3 o'clock, depending on where they teach. But for me, I mean, I coach high school sports, so not only did I go back to work, I went back to 2 jobs. So that happens. Real life happens to you because you have kids who are in school.
And you could probably hear them in the background now. So apologies to anybody there if we can't filter the voices out.
And then the sub story of we were supposed to work on this yesterday, and somewhere between 2 very large soccer fields on our campus, my car key came out of my pocket. And I looked, practice was done. The guys stayed for about a half hour as a team looking. We didn't find it. I stayed for another hour and a half looking, never found it. So that killed yesterday's recording time.
So speaking of which, with car keys, there's a post on the forum where somebody lost their key in the car and it locked on its own.
Yeah, I read that this morning. That's scary.
Yeah.
Now,
that's unusual.
I've never had that happen.
I haven't.
The one thing that happens is on the Honda, the Purple Fit, as you may know, if you unlock the door, let's just say you're in the garage and you unlock the car and then you grab something out of the fridge or whatever, and you kind of take a while, it will lock itself after X amount of minutes.
Yeah, the Land Rover does the same, and BMWs do as well. But I've not heard of something locking itself with a key inside.
With the key inside, right. I don't remember who the original poster was and how the thread went, but you know, my understanding is they couldn't find a way to disable that if that was in fact a quote unquote feature.
Number 1, to the original poster, I hope you got your vehicle inside your car okay, and you got home. That's the first one. Second one is somebody did post, they said, look, just get a standard blank made. Doesn't need to be coded for anything. You're not using it to start the vehicle. It's just to unlock the door, and then use one of the lock boxes.
Yeah.
and stick it under. There's plenty of metal to attach it to,
Well,
and go from there, which is what I'll probably end up doing, to be honest.
yeah, and forgive the ignorance because I don't have one. The fact that they still have an actual keyhole is important for that very reason. A lot of cars don't anymore.
Yeah, it's true.
They just assume that, your battery will work in your key fob.
So, back to Monster Jam. We were in the line to go in where you get security checked and all the rest of it. So in North America, you go through a metal detector, that type of thing. And there was a conversation.
Stop. They just want to make sure you're not going to try to sneak out a monster truck in your pocket.
That's right.
That's what it is.
That's right. We did sneak out a monster truck, but I got skinned for $20 for a Matchbox car. But my son loved it anyway. So there was a really interesting conversation that I couldn't help but overhear. And it was that the mother and the child in front of me, little boy. And he's like, "Hey, Mum, can we video? I want to get a load of video today." And she says, "We're going to have to be careful because I can't have my phone dying on me. Otherwise, we won't be able to get home." And then the little boy says, "What do you mean, Mum?" And he's like, "Well, the phone unlocks the Tesla."
Oh.
So I'm not totally familiar with that platform. But just from hearing this, and obviously my son started talking to their son, and that's how we ended up in the conversation, is that she was using the phone. She didn't even bring a key with her. She was using the app on the phone to unlock the car and to start it up to bring them home. So she didn't have to bring a key with her, which is great in principle. But your phone dies?
Or yeah. Yeah.
It's very, very peculiar. I mean, this convenience stuff is wonderful when it works. When it doesn't,
yeah,
it's like that single point of failure.
Yeah.
What happens if you drop your phone?
Yes. Or, and this is something.
Yes, you can drop a key, but all right. You smash your phone. Yes, you can smash a key, but you can still get in the car.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny that you say that because I do think of this with some regularity. Like, with so much that we can do with our phone, right? Like most stores where I live, I can pay with Apple Pay and just touch my phone to the little thing. Now some state, New Jersey, not yet. California might be. You can have your driver's license like on your phone.
Yeah, they're just trialing a system now.
And your insurance card on your phone, and this on your phone, and on your phone. What if your phone gets stolen?
Like, then somebody else gets the advertising on their Google account,
right?
What I'm waiting for is when you in this interconnected world, you come inside, you plug in your phone, and then CarPlay or Android Auto goes, "Oh, you want baby wipes and diapers," and then it starts advertising on the header unit of your car.
You know that's coming.
Of course it is.